Hello, my name is Allison Warner, and I'm the Chief Editor of Orthodontic Products. Today, I'm joined again by Dr. Roger Levin to talk about what can be done now to manage the impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically how to manage your practice's recovery. Dr. Levin is the CEO and founder of the practice management consulting firm Levin Group. He is a recognized expert on dental practice management and marketing, and he is a frequent lecturer and writer, including for orthodontic products, on these subjects. The Levin Group has worked with over 4,000 orthodontic practices. In our first installment of this multi-episode series, Dr. Levin took a deep dive into the 3 stages of this crisis and how to manage them. In episode 2, he explained the timeline of your practice's strategic recovery and walked us through the 3 phases to explain what you should be doing every step of the way through your practice's turnaround. Today, we're going to take a look at the 20 strategies of recovery that he's identified. Dr. Levin is here to explain these so you know how to get started. Dr. Levin, thank you for joining me again today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And this is going to be really fun, Allison, because we're going to look at 20 strategies out of about 60 we've identified that I think will help people get started, get moving, and get their practices back in moving in the recovery phase the right way. So that'll be exciting.
Definitely. Okay, well, let's get started with number 1. So you've given me a list, so I'm going to walk you through them so you can explain them. So number 1, practices need a fun reopening video for kids.
Right. One, it's very interesting. A lot of practices did a nice job of communicating with patients while they were shut down, but they may forget to communicate with their patients when they reopen. And ortho should be a basically fun specialty. So we've seen clients that have made fun videos with the doctor and the team and people waving and balloons and different things just to say we're reopened. We're looking forward to seeing you. We welcome you back. But you also want to mention the safety. And what I recommend there is just simply mentioning we follow all CDC and ADA guidelines. We always have, and we're completely up to date and welcome everybody back. Great.
Okay, well, on to number 2. You said to call every referring doctor about your reopening.
Right. As you know, and if some of your listeners missed interview 1 and interview 2, we are raising the importance of referring doctors as referral sources. There had been a feeling in ortho for a lot of practices that they could do very well, but without worrying about marketing to the referring doctors and market to the patients and the community. And they did. They did fine. They did okay. We don't think that's going to be the case anymore. So we had recommended, if you were shut down, to be calling 1 to 3 referring doctors a day. It's actually fun. The people I've talked to had great conversations. They really enjoyed it. Now, when you get back in practice, you need to communicate with them as well. So calling to say, how are you doing? How is it going? Is there anything we can do for you? Just wanted to say hello are powerful ways to maintain the momentum that they should have been building up along the way.
Great. Okay, number 3, you said get starts in ASAP.
Absolutely. And I'm going to keep tying back to our previous interviews where I mentioned that revenue is one of the single most important factors in a business turnaround, which all of your readers and listeners are facing. Every practice will be in a business turnaround. And if you have revenue, you're in good shape. So starts represent revenue. So if you have a patient that says they want to start, don't be so busy in the early part of the timeline, pent-up demand, where you put them off 3, 4, 5 weeks and you can't get them in. That would be a classic mistake where they may change their mind, they may have other financial challenges, they may select another office in talking to a mother or a neighbor along the way. So get them in, either start treatment that day, which is great, then treatment's underway, contracts in place, or get them back as quickly as possible, but no longer than 7 days. Keep in mind that the systems that we had prior to COVID-19 have to now go by the wayside. It's an entirely new set of systems. It's a new approach. What worked 6 weeks ago will not work today, and people will end up very disappointed.
Right. Okay. Well, with number 4, this definitely is a real sign of the times. Get cases back on track. Reduce overdue Dbonds. Let's talk about that one.
Right. Well, there are 2 parts to that. One is the get cases back on track. After the 08 or 09 recession, which I spent a lot of time studying the data on to understand what might happen today, there were patients that disappeared for 6 to 12 months. Well, when they came back, the practice ended up carrying them for another, 12, 18 months. Get all your patients back on track as quickly as possible. I also recommended in our last interview, think about lengthening the intervals between seeing patients. Somebody might be at 6 weeks. Why is somebody else at 8 weeks? Maybe the 6-week person can get comfortable at 7 or 8 weeks, because that the less chair time patients take up, the more patients that can be seen. And we are predicting a 20% lower volume in orthodontics than pre-COVID-19. The second part is overdue Dbonds. They're pure overhead. They're bad. They're just bad. And you want to get them as low as possible. And the only way to do that is get your cases back on track. It also means calling overdue patients every single day, not once a month, not when you get time. Staff performance is going to have to now be different than it was pre-COVID-19.
Okay. All right. Number 5, collect or renegotiate overdue accounts. What should they be doing here?
So collections are revenue. If you don't collect money, you don't have revenue. We know from 2008 and 9, in that recession, many patients delayed their payments, didn't make their payments, and that's going to happen again. There's no question we're in a fairly deep recession. Some of these parents may be out of work. Some of these parents may be worried about their jobs. So what's going to happen is delayed payments. So every day, anybody overdue with compassion needs to be called, write your scripts, have them in place. And some people legitimately may not be able to pay you. So the best thing to do there is not lose their payments, but renegotiate them and let them know, though, by any time they're delayed, that phone call comes in, they get to know that they have to pay their orthodontist, just like their mortgage, just like their car payment.
Okay. So number 6, bill on time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know that sounds so simple and obvious, but we see lots of practices that are late on billing when they need to bill, when they need to send statements or invoices. It's pretty amazing, actually, how often that's delayed. When you're in a business turnaround, you want to collect all the revenue you can right on time. So if you bill on time, your collections will be more predictable. If they're predictable, you have revenue. If you have revenue, you have cash, and you're healthy. And that's a great thing, especially in a recovery phase.
Definitely. Okay, number 7, check insurance validation before consult.
Right. This is the one where I want to be careful because front desk people might shoot me. And I wouldn't blame them. But there's going to be not just more work, but a different kind of work in the post-COVID-19 era. And I think this is going to stay permanently. If you check new patients' insurance validation before they walk in your door, you've got a much greater chance of closing. There are patients that had insurance, the insurance is no longer valid. The employer cut the benefits, or they lost a job, or they changed a job. You need to know when they're sitting in front of you what their benefits are, so you can tell them exactly what they will owe and close that case so that the consult becomes a start. Really important.
Okay, definitely a sign of the times. Okay, number 8, answer the phone live every time. Why is this so important?
Because it's interesting, and I can attest to this personally. I love our clients. I love the dentists who call us, and I like to call people. One of the things I've made sure of is that I keep tuned in and in touch. So at Levin Group, I'm in the cycle of people who returns phone calls. So on a given day, I might get a name, it's my turn, somebody called with a question, or they might want to be a client, and if it's my turn, I call them back. I like to talk to people. I am amazed how often I call offices that do not answer their phones. And I'm not critical. I don't judge people. You might have gotten away with that pre-COVID-19. You need to answer that phone live every time. If they're calling about being a new patient and you don't answer, a lot of these folks just go on to the next office, because one of the statistics I didn't give you is that after 2008 and 2009, that recession, the number of the number of offices that were shopped went up to 2.1, which means that a parent made 2.1 appointments on average for every orthodontic every child that they wanted to bring in for a new patient consult. I hope that made sense. We believe that after COVID-19, it's going to go to 2.5 or 2.6. Why the big jump? The answer is because people are going to shop fees, convenience, and location more than ever before, with fees being the largest majority of the decision making. If you don't answer, they just go on to the next office.
Yeah. Okay. Number 9 you have down is expand hours, which has definitely been talked about a lot. So please explain some more.
I did talk about it a lot, but I feel it's so important to have evening and weekend hours. There are people who simply are not going to leave work. They'll be afraid to leave work. Parents who won't do it. So either you're going to get no shows, which means overdue Dbonds. You're going to get new patients who decide not to come to you because you're just not convenient. Unfortunately, hard work is part of a turnaround, and you may not need to do this forever, although I suspect some practices will. But the new definition, or a part of the definition of 5-star customer service, is convenient hours. And if there are no evenings or weekends or early mornings, you're going to find a number of patients. Well, you won't find them because you'll never meet them. And that's my message, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So number 10, you have expand financial options for patients. Let's talk about that.
We didn't really, I mentioned it, but we didn't really get into that in our previous 2 interviews. So when you have a financial challenge, which we have, we're going to have a deep recession. Many Americans are going to be financially challenged. There was a Wall Street Journal article last fall that said that 64% of Americans cannot come up with $400 in a crisis. Well, we're in a crisis. There are a lot of people, and orthodontists don't understand this, because the prevailing view was, and it made sense, if I have a 18-month or 24-month payment plan, everybody can afford treatment. Well, not true. There were people who couldn't afford the down payments and didn't tell you. And there were people now in the last few years who couldn't afford the monthly payment and didn't tell you. So if you don't expand your financial options, you're going to lose patients. The first one is the payment plans, and you may want to even take them out. And these are things I never said before, Allison. I would have told you not to do this, but this is a new world. It will not be business as usual. It will never be business as usual again. So the first thing is payment plans that are 26 months or 30 months or 32 months. Now, some of those won't pay the whole payment plan. And somebody has a right to say, Roger, why would I do that? I'm going to finish treatment. They might not finish paying. Most of them will. Most people have high integrity. Most people follow through. There are a few that won't, no question about it. But if you collect 60 or 70 or 80% of the total fee, you've covered overhead. If you cover overhead, you survive. It's just that simple. It contributes to overhead. It's actually better than nothing. On the other hand, patient financing is another option that orthodontists don't like. Why would I give up a percentage of my fee when I can give my own payment plan? And that's because there are people who can't come up with the down payment or the monthly payment. And the third option is discounts. I think we need to give the treatment coordinators, they need to be completely retrained. This is a whole new world. Sales 101 does not work anymore in post-COVID-19. So we need to be willing to give our treatment coordinators some latitude to say, in these situations, you can give 10%, 15%, or 20%, and just make the decision right there at that point of contact with the mother or the patient and finalize the case. If we have no discounts, again, we're going to lose patients along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, number 11, you have increased reviews. What do you mean by that?
I do. We're just seeing, social media marketing, which is, it worked. It did work. It's also the lazy marketing. It's not bad lazy. You write a check to some company, they do your social media, you get patients, that's great. Isn't going to work that way in post-COVID-19. We are going to see, Allison, an explosion of every company on the face of the earth attacking social media with big budgets. Everybody's trying to survive. Everybody's trying to bounce back. And ortho will not have a budget that competes successfully with $100 million companies, $50 million companies, or Fortune 500s. So, but what we will see is an increased number of people checking reviews, because this is ortho and people do care. They check reviews for a blouse or a suit or a pair of shoes, or whatever, a pen. They're going to check reviews for ortho. And the more good reviews you have, the better it's going to be. If you have bad reviews, people either won't make appointments or they won't come in. And all this, and don't get fooled by marketers. The marketing companies have been relentless. I'm a dentist, so I get these same promotions on how they're going to help you thrive. They're not going to help you thrive. They're going to help you stabilize. They're going to help you gradually come back, but it won't be by strictly social media. But good reviews help, and a lot of good reviews are free. You just have to know how to talk to patients, how to ask for them in a positive way. Your patients like you. When people like you and you ask for reviews, they go and they write reviews.
Right, definitely. Okay, number 12, you have offer aligners to all parents at a discount. I've definitely seen a focus on offering aligners going forward.
Yeah, there's a great trivia question. What cosmetic product sold more in the Great Depression than before the Great Depression? And the answer is lipstick. Women were willing to forego many things. You know, food was tough, incomes were tough, but they weren't going to give up their lipstick. Well, that was the culture of the day. Today, nice teeth represent more higher intelligence, get a better job, people like you better, all those things that we've seen marketed with all the whitening and smiles. So when a parent comes in, offering them aligners at a discount, and it has to, 5% isn't going to do it, 10%, 15%. If it were me, it'd be 20% off on aligner cases. You're still profitable if a parent wants to have aligners while their child is having, you know, basic, whether it's aligners or bracket and wire, basic orthodontics. So but if you don't ask the parents, they don't think about it. There are people who will be fine financially and say, you know what, my child's going through it. I think I'll do it at the same time. If you can grow that 10 or 15%, that's a big win for the practice. So give them a discount and make I used to recommend 10%. I'm now recommending 15 to 20. Yes, your profit margin's lower, but you have profit, which means you're in good shape. So I like that a lot. That's a great strategy.
Definitely. Okay, number 13, you have a recovery bonus for extraordinary results.
Yeah, I did talk about this in our first interview, but and I said that, you know, people should say, well, what do you mean, Roger, give a bonus? I've been out of work. We've been shut down. First of all, you should kill any bonuses that you had pre-COVID-19. Whatever those bonus programs were, kill them off. They don't relate today. And by the way, nobody's going to get them because in the second phase of the timeline that I talked about in our second interview, practices are going to decline in production. It's going to happen. It's only a question of how much based on applying the right strategies. The strategies are recovery strategies, not traditional marketing or management strategies. So with that in mind, what bonus would you give? The type of bonus I never recommended before. In fact, Allison, I wrote a book. It sold a lot called The Bonus System That Works. And you might think I'm about to sell my book. I'm going to tell people don't buy my book. Buy it in a year. But right now, the book is irrelevant because what I said pre-COVID-19, and the book will be good in a year or two again, but it's not relevant right now. So I'm the only interview you've ever done that's telling you don't buy my book. But the reason I say that is I'm going to blow up what I say in the book. And this is a very different kind of bonus. You go out 6 months or 8 months or 12 months, and you say to your team, and the whole reason to do this is to create a common purpose. It's not a bonus to motivate them. If they're not motivated, you've got a problem to begin with. It's that people don't want to work, you've got a problem. That's a whole different interview we could do. But it's a bonus to reward them. And you simply say, it's black and white, it's very simple. If we get to here, I can give you X. If we don't get to here, I can't give you anything. It's all or none. Now, going out 6, 8, 12 months, people forget about the bonus. So it has to be part of your morning meeting every single day. How are we doing toward our bonus? Or people will forget about it. So every morning, by the way, as a quick digression, you need an organizational meeting. And every afternoon, you need a key performance indicator review of how we did today and where we stand. That's critical in the new world order of post-COVID-19. And one of those agenda items in the morning is where are we on our bonus?
Okay, definitely. All right. Number 14, you have rethink multiple office utilization. What are you talking about here?
Right. So this one, I thought about whether I should put it in because it's not for everyone. It's for orthodontists that have more than one office. And you want to be very analytical about how you now use the two offices. Don't just go back to your old schedule. How are you allocating staff? How many extra staff do we have that contribute to overhead to operate two offices? How are we allocating PPE? Oral surgeons, as a great example, our oral surgery clients typically have 3 or more doctors and 3 or more practices. They started grouping up about 15 years ago, but during the COVID-19 shutdown, for emergencies, most of them closed all offices except one, so they could staff just one office. They didn't have large outlays of overhead expenses, and they could limit the use of PPE and not have to allocate it to different offices. Orthodontists with multiple offices need to be thinking the same way, or your overhead is higher and you're going to run out of PPE supply faster.
Okay, that's definitely a key point. Number 15, you have annual referral doctor marketing calendar. What should they be doing?
So you and I said we talk about marketing today.
Yeah.
Marketing is critical, but you have to do the right marketing. And if you simply think you're going to write a check to a social media firm and a website firm, and websites need to be good. They don't actually have to be great. They need to be good. The most important thing is good SEO, search engine optimization. But ortho, still, you get huge referrals, word of mouth referrals from patients, from mothers, and in this case, I'm going to talk about referring doctors. We've elevated them dramatically post-COVID-19. And it's interesting, in many, many businesses, and a lot of orthodontists resent the general dentist because they're doing ortho. There's this belief they're not good at it. Maybe it's true. There's this belief they don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's true, but aligners allow general dentists to treat cases because the case will end up as well as the aligner planning that took place and the patient compliance. So putting all that aside, there are many businesses where your best customers are also your best competitors. Many, many businesses like that. General Electric had many situations when they were a powerhouse where they would make standard products and sell billions of dollars worth, but when it came to custom, they had to buy it from the little companies they competed with that were able to make custom products. So I use that example to say to the orthodontist, yes, the GPs will compete with you. They're also some of your best customers. We have orthodontic clients with GPs who send $60,000 a year, $100,000 a year. We have one that said the top 3 referring doctors each send over $250,000 a year. Don't give up on your GPs just because it takes some effort to build those relationships. But there's now a higher level, and I'm going to talk about something quickly called the referral recovery pyramid. It's another model that we've built. Think of it as a pyramid that has 3 tiers. The first 2 tiers have been there for years. The third tier is brand new. The lowest tier is called recognition. Referring doctors have to know you're there. Now, I don't mean to say they don't know that Joe Smith has an orthodontic practice in the community. They've met Joe Smith. They've seen him at study club meetings in the evening and society meetings. They said hello. They may have had lunch, but they don't think to refer to Joe Smith. So we're going to call that lack of recognition. First, you build recognition. And this is, we've done this for so many clients. It's not hard. It just has to be a system. And then the next tier is called relationship building. And just using Levin Group as an example, for 36 years, we built relationships. That was the backbone of our marketing strategy. It worked. We watched practices one after another do extremely well because referrals means consults, consults mean starts, starts mean production, production means revenue, revenue means cash. It's a wonderful, simple formula. So we saw great relationships lead to great referrals. It works almost every time. Now, though, we believe there's a third tier. You have to have recognition. You're going to have relationship. But the third tier is called referring doctor success. And I'm going to be honest, everything I'm doing is to try to help Allison. I don't want to be self-serving at all. I'm just going to be academically honest. This is going to be kind of hard to do on your own. But if you can, by all means, because this is where the orthodontist helps referring doctors to recover. It helps their customers. I talk about the 7 C's of leadership in a crisis. One of the C's is customers. And referring doctors are your customers. They're just as important as your patients. In many practices, they're more important. And what the question, I always love to go to the big question. Ask yourself, if you're as you're listening to this interview, what are you going to do to help your referring doctors to be successful? Great companies understand that if they help their customers to be successful, they will be more successful as well. And what are the success strategies that you can put in place to help them in the recovery? Because if you do, they're going to bond to you in a way that has never happened before, and you will build loyalty and referrals in a way that we haven't seen for many years. And that's the referral recovery pyramid.
Okay, great. Well, the other aspect of this, number 16, is the annual patient referral marketing calendar. So now let's talk about the patient aspect of this.
Okay, so both referring doctors and patients, you need to build an annual calendar. If you don't, you will fall off, you will be inconsistent, and inconsistency kills referral marketing. If I had to pick one thing that's the worst enemy of referral marketing, it's inconsistency. You're almost better off not even starting. So for patients, you need a robust marketing program. It should be fun. It should be positive. We should be looking at those contests. We should be looking at educational opportunities. We should be looking at fun events. I mean, there are people, having fantastic, Zoom meetings, as I mentioned, with kids, that, you doing interesting things and chances to win prizes and rewards. So there's so many great things you can do before we get back to community activity. We have to get through social distancing. We have to protect people. So, right now, Levin Group isn't saying, well, let's go have a party. That's not necessarily the way to do it. But there are lots of things we'll be able to do with social distancing. And I'm just making up, it's not, the strategy itself is not the brilliant idea. You can rent out movie theaters. You can, there will be sporting events. They're going to be very, very different. And we have to see how this plays out. But as it plays out, there will be opportunities because everybody needs funding. Every school needs funding. Every sports team needs funding. It's all going to be there. But some of it we don't know yet what to do. Meaning we have a million strategies. We don't know which ones are going to continue to develop as changes take place. Set up that annual calendar and make sure you have at least 12 or more strategies focused on your patients so that they know your office is a great place to be.
Great. Okay, well, number 17 is a strong social media presence. You just talked about social media before, so let's talk about how this relates here.
Right, and I'm not contradicting myself. I'm not high on social media for the next 6 to 12 months being a fantastic marketing tool. I think you could get lost. I think it's a place where you want a presence. For example, there are mother study club, not study clubs, but mother groups in the area. Well, you got a lot of mothers in your office that can talk about you. There are all kinds of community groups. You want to be involved in the local social media, and not necessarily because you're soliciting. Facebook ads, I think, they're going to explode. Facebook's going to make a fortune, but the results are going to be diminished for each advertiser, I believe, for a while. But if you're not there, it's almost, if you're not there, it's not that you look suspicious, you just don't get noticed. If you are there, you get noticed, but you need other things then to contribute to the referrals as well. This is how we're looking at the next 6 to 12 months of recovery from COVID-19. And the big modifier, Allison, will also be that there's a strong likelihood COVID-19 will be here this summer and reappear bigger in the fall. Okay, let's say, I don't know, I'm not an epidemiologist, but let's say that happens. Well, that's also going to contribute to changes requiring additional modifications as we go forward. This business turnaround is going to be a constant modification. And that's why the word resiliency is so critical. If you're a rigid person, you're going to have a real problem. You've got to be resilient and flexible and willing to change and change quickly going forward.
Right. If anybody noticed that I seemed a little surprised there, it's because there was a delivery at my door. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Reality of working from home.
Wipe it off when it comes in.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
All right. Well, number 18, you have increased line of credit. And I know we've talked about this a bit before, but let's talk about it again.
Yeah, actually, I have not mentioned line of credit. I've
Oh.
mentioned other situations. I just want to point out to everybody, as soon as you can, increase your line of credit with the bank. If your practice is healthy, go get a bigger line of credit. Why? You might need it. The next round, let's say, and again, I'm not predicting this, but let's say COVID-19 comes back in a big way in the fall, or we don't get a vaccine or a great treatment. Hopefully there's treatment coming, but we don't get a vaccine by the end of the year, and all these different, rumors that are out there. Well, if your practice slows down, the line, and the government doesn't come back in with new loans, they say, okay, you got your PPP, you're done forever. That line of credit might be the thing that keeps you going. You don't have to use it, but it's great to have it. So the banks are reeling right now because they're dealing with all these loans. Call your banker. I talked about having the top 25 relationships that will help you get through the crisis. Your banker's one of them, and tell them you want to expand your line of credit. Having credit is a great thing if you need it. In fact, it may be the survival thing if you need it.
Okay. All right. Well, number 19, you want doctors to analyze their staff allocation. How do you want them to do this?
Yeah, I do. And I almost hate talking about this because it's not pleasant. And I have great compassion for everyone out there. But this is a business turnaround. And the playbook, there is a science behind how to do, an academic science behind the right way to do turnarounds. As I mentioned in another interview, it is taught in business schools. There are textbooks on the subject. There's a real science. And one of the checklist items is you reevaluate your workforce. Do we need everybody that we have? We're coming out of a great economy. Great economies mask situations that you might not handle the same way otherwise. Well, we don't have a great economy anymore. And after a few months of pent-up demand, you may find that your production begins to decline. In fact, I predict that for months 7 through 9, and then gradually building back in months 10 through 24, which is the recovery time frame. So given that time frame, you may need to reevaluate your staffing needs and your allocation and how it's affecting your expenses, or what we in dentistry call overhead. So not a pleasant topic, but one that I feel should be pointed out because I want to share the real business reality with everybody.
Definitely. Well, the final strategy you have, number 20, is know your break-even point. Why is this important?
Okay, it's beyond important. Hopefully, most people won't have a problem with this. But as we know, Allison, some practices will not make it. Some will be in survival mode. So this is important because you got a much better chance if you understand your break-even point, which is very simple. I've watched webinars where people have made it beyond complicated with spreadsheets. You don't need any of that. You basically need a napkin and a pen or a pencil. The break-even point is your expenses. What are your expenses going to be? But not monthly anymore. You need to know your expenses weekly. Every week, how many checks, so to speak, do you have to write? It could be credit cards or whatever, but what are your expenses this week? Then every week you look ahead, you analyze the expenses next week against expected revenue next week, okay? And you then look at your break-even point. If revenue exceeds expenses, you're positive. That's where you want to be. It's really simple. If revenue is below expenses, you're negative, and so you're going to have to take some of your cash to fill in, which will happen some weeks, and that's okay as long as we keep building toward positive revenue over expenses versus negative revenue over expenses, under expenses. So the break-even point, you should know every single week, how much revenue do you need to bring in this week to pay expenses? If you pay your expenses, you survive. And if you do better than that, which most practices will, most practices are going to be okay. They may not get back to where they were, but they will be okay. Then when revenue exceeds expenses, you're okay. And that's a good place to be when you're coming out of a crisis.
Definitely. Well, I think these 20 strategies will really help a lot of practices as they look ahead to recovery. So, Dr. Levin, thank you so much for being with me again today.
Thank you so much, Allison.
Great. And if you'd like to watch a previous episode in our series with Dr. Levin, please check out our YouTube channel. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Be sure to check out orthodonticproductsonline.com for the latest orthodontic industry news. And until next time, take care and stay safe.